I do want to kind of move us over and talk about the teams that the Knicks are playing upcoming. They're playing Charlotte again, Detroit and Toronto, and I wanted us to get a chance to talk about each of those teams. Let's start out with the Charlotte Hornets. We're pretty familiar with the Charlotte Hornets at this point. We can start with the obvious. LaMelo has an ankle injury. That's, as anyone would know, that's a huge loss for them. With LaMelo off the court, the Hornets are, 6.5 points per 100 possessions worse. You would imagine it might be more than that, but that's just the raw on-off. And you wouldn't expect it, but it's actually their defense that takes a huge hit with LaMelo off the court. So that's a really interesting takeaway from the data. Yeah, I'm just curious, is there anything specific that stands out at you from the Charlotte Hornets sans LaMelo Ball?
Yeah, I mean they're just playing better recently. They're up to 5-9. And the two losses they took against us, I think they were, they had only had a couple wins at that time. They're inching closer to, 5-10. They're inching closer to, I don't want to say relevance, but to just not being one of the bottom feeders. Getting Miles Bridges back, of course, helps. Putting aside whatever happened in his personal life. I think it's pretty clear he's a really good basketball player and he helps you. Mark Williams continues to grow as, EPM loves Mark Williams. In fact, I think it puts him ahead of LaMelo in terms of impact this season, which is kind of wild, or it's close.
No, he's behind LaMelo, but yeah, it's much closer than you might think.
Yeah. Just an awesome pick by them. Yeah, you're right. Wow. It has Mark Williams as a negative on defense, and it has LaMelo. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of flukiness to those defensive numbers. I know that Steve Clifford's a really good defensive coach. I think that the Hornets are in a very strange position because LaMelo's had a ton of individual success early on. He's already made an all-star team. I think that they made the play-in back-to-back both seasons that he's been on the team, or he was healthy. They didn't last season. Yeah, they didn't last season. And I think that the Hornets are kind of find themselves in a position where they have to choose between patience and keeping LaMelo Ball happy. Because for better or for worse, the players in this league have made it kind of clear that if it's up to them, they're only, you can pretty much remove 2/3 of the league. Like they'll only play for a third of the league. And so when you're the Charlotte Hornets and you get a LaMelo Ball caliber player, there's added pressure to make sure that he's happy and doesn't demand a trade and, he wants to stick around. I'm not 100% sure that, as nice a guy as Gordon Hayward is, I think a lot falls on the shoulders of Brandon Miller and Mark Williams and how much they progress, how far LaMelo thinks they can go. So if I'm a Hornets fan, I think that's where I start. I hone in specifically on Miller and Mark Williams, because their development and their impact is going to have a huge say in how happy LaMelo Ball is. And I mean, Steve Clifford is kind of Tibbs light. It's really funny. Like he does what he does and he does it well. I can't imagine they view him as the long-term solution. I think they're at the point where they want Clifford to establish a culture like Tibbs did in 2020, 2021. And you can tell he's trying really hard to do it. He has some great press conference quotes of him just being so frustrated with his team, of them not doing, the not getting the nuts and bolts of what he's trying to infuse into this system. So yeah, I mean the Hornets, yeah, they're just in a pretty interesting spot, and I'll be curious to see where they go going forward and how those players do.
Yeah, I agree. this is such a hard team to read to me in terms of like how they move forward. Like you said, I mean, Miles Bridges makes a difference. I think Brandon Miller is going to be really good. LaMelo Ball obviously has superstar level potential, I'll say, especially on offense. The guy's incredible. And Mark Williams is a huge find for them. Outside of that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what their future holds. But what I do think is interesting is of their last 7 games, their defense has been improved, as you suggested. That their worst defensive performances of their last 7 games have both come against the Knicks. The game against the Knicks on the 12th of November, they gave up 144.3 points per 100 possessions pace to the Knicks, which is like, the worst defense in the history of basketball, obviously. And then on the 18th of November, 128.4 points per 100 possessions, which is horrifying. But outside of those 2 games, their defense has been, pretty solid in terms of what they're giving up, in terms of their effective field goal percentage. They've been okay. They've been much improved. So I do think this is a better team, a slightly better team. I think they're getting things together. Kind of the system seems to be gelling a little bit better than it had been. I think the LaMelo loss, though, I just think I don't think they can do much without LaMelo on both sides of the ball. Yeah.
Is it confirmed he's going to be out for a while?
No, it's not confirmed that he's going to be out for a while, but did you see the injury? Did you see him go down and kind of, like it just didn't look good. They did x-rays that were negative. I don't know if they did an MRI, but at the very least, it's like probably a severe sprain. I can't imagine him playing like, the next couple of games at least. And I have to imagine they're going to be careful with him. What else would like he's your prized possession? Not that he's a possession, but you know what I mean. Like in terms of the rights to his duties. I mean, they're going to be careful with him. So I can't imagine he plays like coming up soon. So to me, like I said, their defense has been better. Their defense is worse without LaMelo Ball, which I know is like I feel like that's surprising to most, but. I just can't imagine them doing much. What I do think is interesting as far as like the relevance to the in-season tournament, because this is the final in-season tournament for the Knicks, and I believe it is also for Charlotte. The Knicks need to win this game and also increase their point differential to actually clinch the wild card to get into the Final Four for the in-season tournament. They're not going to be able to win their group. But they can make it into the in-season tournament. And this is like an amazing opportunity with LaMelo Ball potentially, and in my opinion, probably being out, that they can not only win this game, but win with enough of a margin that they kind of secure their bid to make it to the next stage and be in the Final Four in the Eastern Conference of the in-season tournament. So I think that's an interesting storyline for this upcoming game against the between the Knicks and the Hornets. But aside from that, to me, it's just like we'll have to see where they go next. But I think it's gonna depend on Brandon Miller's kind of ascendance early on in his career, and LaMelo Ball's health moving forward. That's really my thoughts on the Hornets.
Yeah, they very clearly have a big 3, and I mean, if I'm a Hornets fan, you're just hoping for progression from Williams and Miller, and that they nail a high.
Sorry, so you have Bridges outside of that big 3, right?
I mean, that's just such a tough. I don't think they want him there long term. I mean, or maybe they do. I mean, he's only 25, so
he's only 25. Yeah,
and he's good. So look, maybe they do. And maybe they think they're a wing away. With LaMelo, Miller, Bridges, and Mark Williams. But yeah, the Bridges thing, it's just so weird. I don't know enough about what happened off the court. So it's just tough to comment on how much the Hornets want him to be a part of their future,
Right. Yeah, of course. But just as far as an on-court presence, just what he brings, and his age. I mean, okay, LaMelo is 22. Miller is 21. Mark Williams is 21, going to be 22 in December. And Bridges is 25. I don't know. Again, we don't know if they wanted to be there long term or what that actually looks like. But as far as like a core, imagining a core 2 to 3 years from now, with
it's a good fitting core.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, and Bridges at that power forward position, he's switchable. He can shoot. I mean, he shot 40% from 3 2 years ago on 4.5 attempts.
Yep.
That dipped, 2 seasons ago, 2020, 2021. He didn't play in last season because of that stuff. That dipped in 2021, 2022, but so did his 3-point attempts. He shot 6 a game. He was down to 33%. And this season, only 5 games, but he's settled in at 37.5% on 5 a game. That's, you're fine with that from your power forward, especially he's not a Julius Randle type. He's not dominating a bunch of possessions. He's playing off ball. He's attacking the offensive glass. He's doing all these things. He's averaged, 1 or more offensive rebounds a game for pretty much his entire career. And again, he's a switchable, good defender. So yeah, I mean, he can fit in between Miller and Mark Williams, which helps you. And I do like that core if there's progression. You said it a few weeks ago. Brandon Miller showed a lot of early signs on both sides of the ball. He hasn't really put it all together, but you are seeing flashes from Brandon Miller in terms of how he can help you on both sides of the ball. And interestingly enough, I thought that he was going to lean more 3-and-D. He showed flashes off the bounce. I still don't think he's a good enough passer to be an offensive engine, but I do think that he could be a good fit off of LaMelo Ball if LaMelo Ball keeps improving and becomes, if LaMelo Ball becomes an all-NBA level initiator, Brandon Miller doesn't have to be, a star offensive initiator. He just needs to be capable, because you do need that secondary initiator.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have LaMelo and Brandon Miller, Mark Williams, who's a good interior passer, just a very impactful player, and you have Bridges roaming on both ends. The Hornets might not be as far away as it seems like they are right now, especially if Clifford builds a good system with accountability and work ethic, like we've seen that's worked with the Knicks. I mean, Thibodeau gets a ton of shit, but look at how quickly he plays. Look at, all their young guys, they live and die with each game, and they do that because of the system they've grown up in. And if Clifford can get his guys in Charlotte to do that, the Hornets might not be as far away as it seems.
I think that's really well said. I don't have a ton to add. I mean, we've talked Hornets a little bit over on these podcasts for the last few weeks. Speaking of a team that seems far away, the Detroit Pistons. I'm trying to figure out how we can have this conversation without it being sad. But Detroit is. I think their updated record.
It doesn't have to be sad.
I mean, I feel, I don't know why I feel sad about it. Like maybe there's some empathy kicking in for me in some way. I don't know. I spent some time living in Ann Arbor. So I lived in Ann Arbor for a little over a year. So I was close by Detroit. Been to a few Pistons games. The sports culture there is really great. And I like the Pistons. Like, I think that they're cool. I think that when they were good and when they're good, it's like it's good for the NBA. It's good. I enjoy the city and the environment. So that's kind of, it feels sad because I'm thinking about it in the context of like Detroit and like hard times, and it's just they're bad. They're bad, Geoff. They're really bad. I don't know. They don't have nobody's playing particularly well on that team. Maybe really Asar Thompson on defense, might be the only, like, the brightest light. For
and his offensive rebounding, weirdly enough.
Yeah, and his offensive rebounding has been amazing, especially for a guy that's 6'7" or whatever he is. So yeah, I to me that might be the brightest light. But yeah, is there anything that you want to talk? Because what I wanted to talk about as far as the Pistons is I was just looking at some of the data on their kind of shot diet, their shot selection, and they are bottom in the league in terms of like frequency of shooting 3-pointers. 29.8% of their shots come from 3-point range, which is rock bottom in the NBA. And they don't shoot it poorly, about like average, about 36%, but they it's not working for them to take essentially like very, very few threes. But I looked at their roster and it's like, who would be taking the threes? Like I just don't know what they can do to turn things around. But do you have a kind of an assessment on the Pistons and at least some long term trajectory that you can say that might make it less sad for me, at least?
So I think the Pistons are a really good case study of your entire basketball thesis and in terms of the value of shooting. Because what we're seeing in Detroit right now is the bottom of the mountain of a snowball effect that starts when you have no space. Everything that we're watching in Detroit, the first domino is that nobody is allowed to operate in any space. So how do you evaluate any of these players objectively in a vacuum when it's basically like every single player on the team is individually operating with one hand tied behind their back.
Yeah.
And Cade Cunningham has the ball. Okay, well, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and two bigs. Their best spacer is Isaiah Stewart in their ideal lineup right now. Cade Cunningham, who they want to be, an elite primary engine, is probably their best spacer. That can't happen. So the first step needs to be that these players, they need to improve as shooters, or they need to bring in shooting. Jaden Ivey specifically needs to become a better and more willing shooter. Even if there are lumps, even if Jaden Ivey spends a month shooting 25% from three, he needs to get comfortable shooting, 6-7 threes a game. Or Cade Cunningham needs to say, okay, I'm not going to be Luka. I'll be a more willing off-ball shooter, and he needs to be the threat. They need space. They need gravity, or else you can't objectively analyze this team in a vacuum, because everything they're doing right now isn't really paramount to what they'll do on a team that's trying to win.
I think I just want to jump in because I think that's an amazing point. I think that what you're saying, I love that you brought this point up. I agree fully that you can't really assess and analyze these players in this kind of contrived condition, which is totally antithetical to the modern NBA, which is that they're playing on this like small court, essentially. Like they're playing on this like really tightly packed court, and you just don't know how good these guys are, because obviously on a widely spread out court, players are able to perform to their best ability. And we see kind of not only are they as good as they are, but they're be able to be made, I don't want to say better than they are, that doesn't make sense, but they're able to be like, they're able to have their skills be shown off in the best light. But having this kind of like inability to space the court, all these guys are seeming worse than they are, honestly, because these guys need space. Their best shooter right now is Alec Burks. And with Alec Burks on the court, their offense is 7.6 points better per 100 possessions. And that's not a coincidence, like that's because he's the one guy who can shoot 40% from three, like on high volume. So yeah, I think that's just a tremendous point. I just wanted to kind of emphasize it.
Yeah, it's almost like a social experiment. Like, what would happen if you stuck 5 players who it's so weird, because like you just said, if you put Asar Thompson, even this rookie version of Asar Thompson, on a team with 4 shooters, his impact would be more pronounced. And you can say that for every single player on this team. So like, there are people calling Cade Cunningham a bust. Maybe he is a bust. I don't know. Maybe he's never going to be worthy of the number 1 pick. How can we truly know that in these conditions that he's playing? And we're not. So it's tough to gauge what their long-term trajectory is going to be like until them missing out on Chet Holmgren is just They were supposed to have the number 1 pick that year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I think they fell out of the top 3. Because that was the year they got Ivy, right? And
That's the year they got Ivy. Yeah, that would Chet would fundamentally change everything for them, honestly.
Right. I don't know what else there is to say about the Pistons, because until they get spacing, it's just the best thing I can say about each Pistons player right now is there have been flashes, like I covered on the High Hand Theory Twitter account. I think Cade and Ivy have improved playing off each other. I really like what I've seen of them playing together in a small sample. But how much better how much more pronounced would that seem if their 3 through 5 players could shoot better or could shoot at all? I mean, it's wild watching them, how jumbled the spacing is. The defenses just don't care about any of them out there. In a weird way, it's kind of a compliment to them that they're able to score even as that they're not laughably the worst. Like, in my opinion, based on how little spacing there is, they should be way below every single other team in the league. Think about all the other bottom dwelling teams. The Spurs right now, yes, we were joking a little bit earlier about Jeremy Sohan playing point guard. But I mean, they have Devin Vassell, their center. They have 2 willing shooters at power forward and center in Wembanyama and Collins. I know Collins hasn't actually shot the ball well, but he has minimal functional spacing as a center. He gets closeouts when he gets the ball at the top of the key. The defenses don't want him just stepping into wide open threes. Mm-hmm. Keldon Johnson, I think he's an overrated overall player from an impact perspective. He can shoot the ball. He's a better shooter than anybody in the Pistons starting lineup. Sans maybe Cade Cunningham. The point is that the gap between the Pistons shooting and their spacing and every other team in the league is so unbelievably wide, way wider than the actual offensive output is. And so I don't know. I think there's a chance that Pistons players, because they're not just going to keep this core. They're eventually going to, say, okay, like, we can't just keep running back this core. We have to make fundamental changes. And I think that there's going to be a chance for teams in the league to buy low on Pistons young players, that they basically just say, like, okay, we need to add space. We need to get rid of these guys. And teams are just going to be like, okay, well, they haven't done anything in the NBA yet. But as I alluded to, I think almost all of these players, if not all of these players, would be immediately more impactful in more optimal conditions around them.
Yeah, so you went exactly where I was going to lead you, which is, do you imagine that a bunch of these Pistons players get dispersed around the league and then are like really good when they get into different environments and context? Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask you.
I think Cade is safe. I think when you take a guy number 1, like, he's at least going to get
they're not moving Cade. Yeah,
a second contract. But like Jaden Ivey, like, that is a talented dude. You put Jaden Ivey in a slightly better situation. I mean, who's to say he can't just immediately be a high impact 6 man who just, initiates offense versus opposing teams' bench units in space when he can get into the rim. And then all of a sudden, and the thing I haven't talked about here, which is vital, it's really hard to improve during these games as a player in these conditions. It's hard enough to just impact the games positively. It's even harder to, like, hone your craft. If you're Jaden Ivey and you're saying, okay, I know how to get to the hoop, but I don't know if I'm the best at making rim reads, when I should shoot, when I should kick out. Well, you're not improving your ability to kick out when there's no one to kick out to. All of a sudden, Jaden Ivey goes to this other team. There's more options. There's more film to study. This is a player that's his improvement trajectory has a better chance of going up. So all these things, again, to use the domino or the snowball example, these are all individual dominoes that add up and just create a shitstorm. And I think that that's what the Pistons are in the middle of right now. And to be frank, I don't know what the first step out of it is. I don't know how they get themselves out of the mud.
Yeah, and I think that's another tremendous point, because if you're Jaden Ivey, you're attacking the rim. If your kick out option is a really bad 3-point shooter, it might be the optimal choice for you to put up a bad shot at the rim. Like actually, that may be your best option as far as like potentially like getting an efficient outcome, or the most efficient outcome between the two options. So I think that's a great point. The Pistons, with a 108.5 per 100 possessions offensive rating, right behind the Chicago Bulls, actually, interestingly. So behind the Chicago Bulls and ahead of San Antonio, Memphis, and Portland. So yeah, maybe it is I think you did it. I think you successfully made this not depressing for me, because maybe it is a credit to their players and their talent that they're able to still put up, not an absolute horrible league worst offensive rating. But yeah, so I think that's a great point. Let's talk about the final team on our list here, the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors, aka the Pascal and Scotty show. Do you have any initial thoughts about the Raptors?
Yeah, Barnes has really come back to down to earth since the last time we talked. I mean, he's still top 10 in EPM, but these last few games have been pretty rough for him. They're just another. I don't really know what they're doing. They're just kind of in no man's land right now. They're coming off a pretty tough loss to the Cavs. I mean, Donovan Mitchell was like 4 for 19 or something, and the Cavs still won pretty handily. It's weird that they're still in the same position it felt like they were in a couple of years ago when Scotty Barnes was a rookie. They have a lot of players who are kind of similar, and I think they really need to move OG Anunoby. I guess that's the first thing I'll say. I think he's the odd man out. I think they're missing Fred VanVleet. I think they're missing his defense at the point of attack, just his leadership. They don't really have Schroeder's doing his best, but VanVleet is a much better organizer than Schroeder is. He provides more space. He's a better defender. I think they're missing VanVleet. I think that they should probably trade OG and maybe even Siakam. I mean, Siakam's approaching 30. Maybe you just get what you can for him. I think Barnes has to be the key, and he is the player that I would emphasize with the Raptors going forward. But there's really not. I mean, Gary Trent Jr., he struggled a little bit to start, but like he is what he is. Like I feel pretty comfortable in saying I know what Gary Trent Jr. is. I don't know I don't think this team can fly very high this season. And I also don't love their long-term trajectory until I see what kind of moves they make, because I don't foresee too many players that are currently on the roster still being on the roster in 2 seasons. What about you?
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I mean, their offense is, it's not very good. I think they rely on offensive rebounds. They're not offensive rebounding like they did last year, where they were one of the best teams in the league at it, and had a similar kind of style to this, like a poor shooting team that got a lot of extra chances and extra possessions and didn't turn the ball over. They're kind of like having a difficult time replicating that approach this year. Their offensive rebounding numbers have come down, not way down, they're relatively similar, but they're turning the ball over a lot more, and they're not shooting much better. So, for those reasons, they're a worse offensive team. To me, honestly, I don't know so much that they need to move OG Anunoby. I think OG is showing a really like a level of consistency in terms of his shooting and his defense that I feel like he fits really, really well, and just needs some other players to kind of support. Like Scotty and OG, to me, as your front court, I think that works really well. You have 2 amazingly impactful wing defenders who can both, I don't buy Scotty Barnes' shooting, but if he was going to shoot like 36 or 37%, who can both spread the floor, both handle it a little bit. Obviously, Scotty's a little more efficient with it and a better assist man. I think that's a really good I think that's a really good front court to me. So to me, it is Pascal that's the odd man out to me, and I feel like the big move for them is to move Pascal Siakam, and I don't know what you can get back for him, but Scotty OG, and even if you keep Jakob Poeltl, I like that. I kind of like that, and I think that if you can get something back for Pascal, I would say that I have to see them moving him, but I don't know what Masai is gonna do. He's like a madman. Like, who knows? Like, he just would let guys go walk for free. Like, I have no idea what to expect as far as like, I don't know if I can put the expectations of a rational, a reasonable person on him. But to me, that's the clear thing that needs to happen. And then it's obviously working on the backcourt that I think is the issue. I will say Schroeder has been pretty good, and honestly, watching Raptors games when I've kind of like popped into various Raptors games, like he's like stood out to me. Actually, he stood out to me as, you know, kind of being what he's always been, very crafty. You know, he's very sneaky. His shooting's been like kind of better than I remember it being on the Lakers. And so like I think he's played admirably as you suggested as well. And I did call it the Scotty and Pascal show, but Schroeder has a reasonable amount of usage and playmaking responsibilities on that team. He's just not gonna be a guy to kind of like take you over the hump or really make a huge impact as far as like winning is concerned. So to me, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the contract situation is for OG. Are they going to sign him to a big contract? I'm not sure what he would command and what he would want and what he would need to like stay there. But if you could have those two, Scotty and OG and Jakob Poeltl, to me, that's like a pretty good start towards building something. So that's what I'm thinking as far as the Raptors.
Yeah. I mean, OG is over 40% from three this year. Pascal Siakam is shooting 22% from three on 4 attempts a game.
On how many attempts?
4.
Wow. 22% on 4 attempts a game? See, he's just hitting 1 of 4, less than 1 of 4 every game.
Less than 1 of 4, yeah.
That's not gonna cut it.
It's not. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely not. Somehow he still has a 56% true shooting percentage, which is pretty amazing. He's been pretty incredible inside the arc. So I mean, for comparison, Julius Randle's shooting 28% from three, 6% better than Siakam, and his true shooting is 48%.
That's incredible, actually. What is Pascal shooting at the rim then? Is he like dominating at the rim?
I'd have to find splits. We're gonna do this on the fly.
No, I found it. So he's not even dominating at the rim. He's shooting 66.1% at the rim, which is very good, but it doesn't make up for it. So he's 48. He's shooting about 49% from mid range. He's killing it from mid range this year. Which might be part of the problem.
Could be. I mean, even from 3 to 10 feet, he's shooting exactly 50%, or excuse me, 3 to 16 feet when you combine them.
Wow.
So he's shooting 50%. That's pretty ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
I see. By the way, I see 72% at the rim.
Huh. That's so interesting. Again, I'm looking at dunks and threes as like my kind of reference point. So there's going to be subtle difference. Normally, very minor differences between some of the sites, but yeah, that's a pretty substantial difference.
Yeah. Listening to you talk, I think I agree with you that I think that they could get a big enough return for Siakam that if they just traded Siakam and had Barnes as like the main cornerstone, but with OG and Poeltl as supporting pieces, I think they'd be in a much better spot. So I'll be interested to see who shows interest. But like, I don't know, like, you know, Atlanta was a team that was rumored to be interested in Siakam in the offseason. If the Hawks and Raptors did a Murray for Siakam, like, how would you feel about that?
I like that for both parties. That's a really interesting call. Now, Murray for Siakam. I mean, I think I like it a little more for Toronto. I've generally been high on Murray than most other people that I know. And I think that he's performing really well this year, especially offensively, having one of his best offensive seasons, even though he is, not finishing at the rim very well, but he's shooting a lot better than he used to. And his 3-point shooting has improved so much. And I think it's real because his free throw shooting is up. His mid-range shooting is up. Like, I think his shooting improvement is real, and he's about like 27. So I think I can expect some of that to stay. And then some of the versatility that Pascal offers, I think, would mesh really well with the team that he'd go to. But I don't know. I could see something like that working. But I think that would be a bigger return than they can actually expect to get for Pascal. I think Pascal being, what'd you say, he was 30?
Yeah, 30.
Yeah, I think that's a bigger return than they probably could expect to get for him.
He turns 30 at the end of this season. Sorry, he's 29 right now. But I don't know. I actually think Siakam's viewed higher than Murray right now across the league.
You feel like so? Maybe yeah. I'm just higher on Murray is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's being suppressed in Atlanta a little bit just because Trae Young, but I do think that does hurt. Like I don't think that if you were the Hawks, like, and you were in trade negotiations and the Raptors were like, okay, we'll do something based on Siakam and Murray, we can do something centered around that. And the Hawks were like, well, actually, Murray's way better than we're letting him be. Like, I don't see that working.
Honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. I think they might make that argument though, because they might be like, yeah, we're trying to work this thing out with Trae and DeJounte, and it is not like he's going to be so much better in your environment. Like I why couldn't they make that argument?
They could. They could. I don't see that flying in NBA circles. That just doesn't seem like, because everybody finds out everything these days. Like, can you imagine if that report was leaked?
Yes,
like the Woj bomb.
Yeah.
Atlanta GM Landry Fields says Murray's actually way better than he is on his, like, come on.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but what do you think of the Jalen Johnson and Pascal Siakam fit? That's kind of like the
it's
issue
a little
for
messy.
me.
I mean, I know what me and you would do.
Yeah, of course. We just play Pascal at the center.
Right.
Right.
I could see
they're
that.
Not gonna. I don't know if they're not gonna do that though.
Why? Their defense is already bad enough. Just go all in on offense. That'd be such a sick team. Like
that
Trae
would
Young,
be sick. I would love that. Yeah.
Trae Young, Bogdanovich, Hunter Bay, Hunter. Like, that's the best spacing they'll ever have.
Yeah.
And again, I always say that Siakam, I just told you he's shooting 22% from 3 on 4 threes a game. That's way more detrimental to you from the power forward spot than it is from the center spot.
And Pascal has shot 30 something, like mid 30s in his career. I don't think he's a 22%. He's still taking four threes a game, so clearly he doesn't think he's a 22% 3-point shooter either. So I don't think that's real. I don't think he's a low 20s percentage 3-point shooter. So and I don't know, maybe with more spacing, he and at the 5 position where guys are not really coming out to him as much, like, he can shoot better than that. So yeah,
and running pick and roll with Trae Young.
Yeah, you're convincing me. so I just don't know if Atlanta is willing to kind of move on from the Capella thing. I think they like Capella and they like that style with Trae, and so that would be the thing to take it over the hill. Well,
here's the beauty though. Jalen Johnson is a crazy athlete, like a better athlete than Siakam is.
For sure.
So they could run like horns or double screens, drag screens with both Johnson and Siakam screening, and have Johnson at power forward just be the guy who dives to the rim like they love Capella. And they could emulate what the Trae Young Capella screen and roll with Jalen Johnson. And then they could also, I mean, Siakam, it's not like he can't roll, but him then popping as the center, like you just said, opposing centers aren't going to want to come out on the perimeter with him. I think that could be a really effective offensive scheme, and they would replicate it just fine.
I mean, I think that's a great point. It could absolutely work and would be super dynamic. But I will say, like, the Hawks are already a ridiculous offense, right? Like, it's not like I could say if their offense was struggling And you're like, well, look at this option I have for you. And they'd be like, well, yeah, we can definitely do that. Our offense would be amazing. Like we'd score like, I don't know, 121 points per 100 possessions. And it's like, well, actually we already are. like they're already the second best offense in the NBA so far. I mean, do I think a lot of that is like real? Yeah, no, I don't think that all of that is necessarily real, especially given like, Jalen Johnson shooting and some other things that feel like more kind of blips than trends, but also Trae Young's not shooting that well. So, or hasn't.
He's been better. He's been better recently.
He's been better of late. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I could see it working. I think Atlanta would have to be the one to decide that. Again, I don't know. You might be right that teams may see Pascal as more valuable than DeJounte, but to me, like that kind of deal would help Toronto more than it would Atlanta in terms of like the asset exchange.
You wouldn't be worried about DeJounte Murray with Barnes with a big and Pearl. That's kind of three non-shooters.
I think that DeJounte is a better shooter. Like I think that his improvement is real because how I look at shooting improvement is it like moderate. Like I don't look at the huge shooting jumps. I generally don't think like you go from shooting 31% to shooting 43%. Like that, I'm always going to question that. I'm not going to think that that's legitimate. And then, so is it moderate and is it sustained and not is it linear, but is it like consistent? So to me, DeJounte's shooting has gone and on various volume, of course. He's shot 37%. 32%, 33%, 34%, this year 37%. Like that's real to me. Like he's gotten a little bit better every season. His free throw shooting has improved as well. 79, 79, 83, 86. Like it's to me all of that is kind of correlated in ways that you would expect to see a guy like slowly improve their shooting from their early 20s to their late 20s. So to me, I can buy him as like a little better than league average 3-point shooter.
So do you think that even though we both agree that RJ Barrett's current 3-point percentage isn't sustainable, do you believe there has been some improvement and that him finishing the season in that same range, 37, 38% would be 36, 37% would be reasonable?
Oh, reasonable for sure. I thought you were going to say expected. So reasonable, absolutely. I think that would be reasonable. Expected, I'm not sure because RJ Barrett's is one of those cases where the shooting jumps around a ton, right? So he starts out 32%, spikes all the way to 40% in the bubble season, drops back down to 34%, drops down further last year to 31%. Right now, obviously a spike to 42%. Like I don't know. I don't have an expectation really. I would love to see it level out at around 37 and that be the shooter that he is. I think that'd be great. 37, 38. I think that'd be amazing. I don't really have a clear expectation, but it's too sporadic for me to feel like confident about like, yeah, he's probably this kind of shooter.
Yeah. I was finding an analogy there because the free throw shooting, in my opinion, is pretty clearly improved.
Yeah. I do look at free throw shooting as far as like, if I think a guy is like a player is a real, has made real improvements in the shooting. And yeah, RJ has definitely improved his free throw shooting. But RJ also has these like stretches, these random stretches where he shoots really well. And so I don't know if like he's making small tweaks to his form that like work. So at least for me, so when I used to play basketball in like high school, and then, just for fun in college and stuff, like I would make small tweaks to like my shooting form, and then I would get really great results for like a week or two, and then it would always just be like, okay, I'm back to what I was before. And I don't know if that happens on the NBA level or not, obviously. But at least in my experience, like I would be like, okay, like let me move my hand this way, or let me tuck my elbow a little bit more, or let me like, start with my wrist, push back a little bit further. Let me change my set point. Like I would make one small tweak like that. And then all of a sudden I would be so much better of a shooter. And obviously it's silly to compare myself to an NBA player, but I think they are doing some of these things where they're making small tweaks like that. So I don't know. I would need to see it over a long period of time.
It's funny how prevalent that is just in everything. Like I was a scratch golfer when I was in my early 20s.
That's insane.
And,
wow.
I would say since I turned 22, I'm playing anywhere between 0 and 15 times a year, so I'm just not as good. And it's just golf is it's a very different animal because it's just such a mental game. And to me, it's always been like, if I know how good I once was, if I can't be that good again, there's just no point. Like I can walk out on the course right now and be, a six through an 8, with no practice. So that's good enough for me. But my point is that I've had stretches where I've been like, okay, I'm going to try to get back to what I once was. And I've made like the smallest tweak in my swing, and the immediate results are always amazing. And like for a week, I'm just striping the ball.
Yeah.
And then I'm just back to what I was. And I'm like, wait a second, what happened here? Like, why isn't this working anymore? And
it's like, I'm still doing it. What's going on? Yeah.
Do you ever have like, so I don't know how high level you played basketball at. I played
just in high school.
Through high school. No, I just mean like, how do I say this without sounding pretentious? Just like how good, I guess. Who cares how good somebody was in high school? But I was all right. And I always think back and like wish I wasn't such an idiot. Like I wish I knew then what I know now. Like I definitely didn't take enough threes. Like I always like I was like the point guard and I led our team in threes. But I definitely could have. Our team was bad. Like our best offense definitely would have just been me shooting a 3 at any time,
Yeah.
And I wish I understood that back then, because I was definitely like trying to be more of a hooper, like trying to get into the paint. And it's like, dude, you're not 6'6". Stop trying to do that. Like, like just launch. I don't know if you think about that stuff, but I think about it all the time. I just wish I shot more. And also I wish I was more exploitative of ball handling. I have really good hand-eye, and like if I have a kid, I'm just gonna be like, dude, nobody knows how to dribble, press and try. Like totally. I guarantee you there are so many missed opportunities by not pressing at a lowish high school level, because it's not like these are. Yeah.
I would say my comp was probably Jordan Goodwin, and for those who don't know, this is a callback to our last episode when we have a running bit where I mention a random role player on an opposing Knicks, a team that's opposing the Knicks, and talk about their potential defensive impact. Jordan Goodwin was the person I mentioned.
I'll never forget the first one. The first one was so ridiculous to me because it was so in rhythm. You were like, Bucks just have all these good defenders. They have Pat Connaughton. I was just like, dude, what? What are you talking about? And then I looked up the impact numbers, and I was just like, okay, I guess Connaughton's not. I guess I'm just the racist, Like I was just like, oh, he's white. He can't be good. But I don't know. Like,
that's funny.
That was just so ridiculous to me. So wait, who is this week's?
The Jordan Goodwin. Well, I'll say this week's. But the Jordan Goodwin comp is just because. So I mean, I think we saw, and if you watch really closely, Brunson got off, but on possessions when Goodwin was just matched straight up against Brunson, and there were no screens coming, it was just kind of like ISOs. Goodwin could stay with him. He stayed with him, and he frustrated him at times. It felt a little bit like watching Fred VanVleet. It felt a little bit watching like Fred VanVleet play Brunson defensively, like a smaller guy who is a little sturdier and could kind of stay in front of him and just make him have to shoot over the top, not go for a lot of his fakes and his crafty moves. And Brunson would just get a little frustrated and just give up the ball a couple times.
He's also just a pest. Like he beat Quickly for offensive rebounds twice in that game.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Quickly, you have to box out. And this isn't to, take blame away from Quickly, but watching the replays, it was just like, oh, Goodwin's just like annoying. Like it's not like Quickly wasn't trying to box out. He wasn't just doing the Randall thing where he just stands there, but Goodwin's just, he was just everywhere. That was, he didn't have to hit the threes he did. I don't know. He's just, that shit was annoying. But I mean, to bring it back to the Knicks, there's variance like that in every game. You have to control the things you can control. And the Knicks did a terrible job of controlling what they can control in that Suns game. And Absolutely. they left themselves open to being beaten by a really good player in Devin Booker. I mean, he had 11 assists and 2 turnovers. I do think we kind of underrated Booker's impact in that game a little bit. I mean, the Knicks were sending doubles all over the place, and Booker only had 2 turnovers. It's
But I
pretty
feel like
remarkable.
they facilitated his impact, I think, is the thing that I came away with. It's like
Yeah.
when I just don't like that. I don't think that works. And I don't know. I'm not an NBA coach, but it just doesn't make sense to me to, really force a guy to give up the ball when he's not even necessarily attacking. Like, you're just creating this kind of black hole. You're turning him into like an amazing gravity player, but he already is. Like, you don't have to just like give the gravity. Like, it's just a strange concept to me strategically. So I guess I meant like he wasn't shooting particularly well. He was forcing up a lot of shots. I would have been fine with Booker just taking a bunch of like mid-range shots and long threes with like just good defense. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And we have a bunch of Jesus. The Knicks have a bunch of different looks to throw at him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
But no, I was honestly, I was pretty serious about that comparison. As far as myself, like that's the kind of player I was, and I was a point guard initiator. I could get into the paint, and I was just like a really aggressive pest defensively, and like pretty athletic for my size, quick laterally. So I was just, that was my role. So.
I can't wait until I can't wait until we organize the first ever hot hand theory pickup game, and we figure out which member of Knicks Twitter has the highest lube.
Such a weird sentence, but yeah, we're gonna have to figure that out. We're gonna work on the lube thing. My pick.
Hey, it can be a co-ed game, like it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. We can cut this. Cut that.
It's like it could go from being cut to being the intro. Who knows where it's gonna end up?
Yeah. This is what y'all get. 2 hours of this, folks.
My pick for this week is Bryce McGowan's. I think Bryce McGowan's is
all right. We gotta stop the pod. You're taking this bit too far.
Listen, he's a young player, and he doesn't play very much, but when I've seen him play, he's been pretty solid defensively. He's a little bit like one of those pesty guys who is solid on the ball and doesn't get out of position and is okay on help defense. So I mean, if he plays at all against the Knicks, which I'm imagining he will play a few minutes given LaMelo Ball not playing, I think we'll see some of his defensive impact. And if I hit on this one, I'm starting the show. I'm starting the next episode talking a lot of shit. So just so you know.
I was already going to be annoyed if Quickly had a bad game, but now Quickly has a bad game because Bryce McGowan's is putting him in jail. I'm just...
that's funny.
That would have been, yeah.
All right. We are coming to the end here on Hot Hand Theory. Thank you all for being with us. We're not gonna give a code word this time to send in our DMs because we know you guys are rocking with us and you're here to the end. But yeah, if you can, it would be super helpful to us to drop a like, to subscribe, but actually do it. I know every YouTube video is like and subscribe. It's like at this point, you don't even register that people are saying it, but actually doing that would be super helpful to us. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you found our conversations and musings pretty interesting throughout. So yeah, anything you want to say, Geoff, to close us out?
Yes. Liking our video directly impacts us way more than liking a Mr. Beast video does. So keep that in mind, folks. When Mr. Beast flashes on the screen and he's like and subscribe, folks, and he gets billions of people to do it, your it's worth, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny. Every single person listening to this right now who's made it this far, if you just click that little button and subscribe it, you're moving a mountain. That's all I have to say. So, help a couple guys out. We're trying to bring the best content we can.
I think that's such a great. You're having Nikola Jokic impact by dropping a like or subscribing to this podcast. And who wouldn't want to have a Nikola Jokic impact in their life, in any facet? So yeah. Anyway, appreciate that note from you, Geoff. And yeah, this has been Hot Hand Theory.